This video is about solving percent problems using the what is and of method. So we're going to be solving problems like what is 15% of 132, and the way we're going to do it is by using what, converting it to an in or our unknown, is converting it to an equals sign, and of will convert to a multiplication symbol. And that way we'll be able to take sentences like this and turn them into equations that will help us solve for the missing piece. For our first example, we're solving the question, what is 32% of 64? What is going to become in, that's what we're after, is equals, and of is multiplication. So for our numbers, 64 is just 64, but for our percent, you have to remember that to convert a percent to a decimal, you want to take the decimal and move it twice to the left. So 32% we're going to have to write as a decimal, and we'll write it as 0.32. So now this is our equation that we get out of this question, and we would just want to solve this equation for n. This is the easier case because n is already by itself. We just have to figure out what is 0.32 times 64. So we can multiply those, 64 and 0.32. 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 19. And then we'll add the result to get 8, 4, 10, and 2. And then since our factors have a total of 2 decimal places, our answer should have 2 decimal places. So it looks like 20.48 is 32% of 64. Here's a similar question except we're solving for the percent. What percent of 256 is 64? So the what percent is what we're looking for. That whole thing is going to be in. Of is multiplication, 256 is just 256, is equals, and 64 is 64. So we still want to solve for n, but this time n isn't by itself. N is being multiplied by 256. If we want to solve for n, we need to get rid of that 256, so we'll do the opposite. We'll divide by 256. And since it's an equation, we have to do it to both sides. So here the 256 cancels because it's on top and bottom. So we have n equals, and 64 divided by 256 is 0.25. Now because we have n by itself, but n was supposed to be a percent, so the last step is convert a decimal to a percent. You have to move the decimal twice to the right, so n will be 25%. Last example here, 20% of what is 16? We're going to take 20% and convert it to a decimal, which would be 0.20. We don't need the 0 at the end, so we're just going to write it as 0.2. Of is multiplication, what is in, our unknown, is equals, and 16 is just 16. So this is the equation that we get out of this question, and now we're going to solve it for n. N is not by itself because it's being multiplied by 0.2. So in order to solve for n, we're going to divide both sides by 0.2. Over here, the 0.2's cancel, so we get n equals, and 16 divided by 0.2 is actually 80. So we just figured out that 20% of 80 would be 16.